Hi there, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I am very excited to have a dear and old friend, not old as in age, but old as in length time, um, friend on the show today. We're going to be talking to CEO and founder of Starfish Vilt, Liam Abramson. Liam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be chatting with you.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about education. You can see that I have an educational type background. I've got a chalkboard up behind me just in honor of you. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you do. And I guess first, tell me about the name of your company. What does VILT stand for?
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, so VILT actually stands for Virtual Instructor-Led Training. So Starfish VILT is a corporate training company. And what we do is that we run a whole bunch of soft skill leadership programs, sales programs, strategic programs for corporations. And we do it face-to-face, which is what's known as ILT, which is instructor-led training. But we also do a lot of VILT, which is virtual instructor-led training programs. And we've been doing this for years. Now, everybody's looking for virtual instructor-led training because of the current situation we're going through. But we've actually been in the business of running virtual sessions for full-time for about the last 4 years. But I've been running virtual sessions for the last 15 years. So that's what the VILT stands for, and what we really focus on is medium to large organizations that have a workforce that needs to be trained, or leadership that needs to be trained, people transitioning into leadership, and then definitely sales programs, sales leaders that need to be trained.
Wow, that's fantastic. When I met you, you were definitely doing a lot of training around the world. And I know one of our jokes is always, where in the world is Liam? Because I would text you and you'd be in Texas, or you might be, in another country somewhere. Dubai, I think, was one of them. I mean, there's just everywhere. You were everywhere. Give me just I was always astounded by how often and how many flights that you took in a year. An idea.
Well, when we first met, I think that was 2005, is when we first met. I was doing a lot of international travel. So for those first few years, I was doing about 35 international trips from Boston every single year. So, and it would be Singapore and Moscow and Cairo and Colombia and all over the place. But then when my daughter was born, I sat down with my wife and we said, well, we're just going to, I'm going to restrict my travel to local travels. And we defined local as being North and South America. So, but now recently in the last sort of 8 years or so, majority of my traveling now is just in it's just been in the US. But what's been quite interesting about the market is that, when we first met, 2005, the market was running very high. And so everybody wanted in-person training. Everybody wanted to fly around the world, and that's what we were doing. Then, of course, we had 2009, which was the recession, and that's when that slowed down quite considerably. And that was really the beginning of some sort of transformation into virtual instructor-led training. The technology didn't really exist back then. I'm not even sure Zoom was in existence back then, but the technology wasn't really working that well. But we came out of that recession and got into 2015 to 2020, where everything ramped up again. And my traveling has been, for the last couple of years, been extreme. And just within the US, I probably do about 130 or 140,000 miles of flight miles every single year. And what's happened now, I mean, I have not been on an aircraft since March 5th. I've not set foot on an aircraft. In fact, I haven't set foot out of the house pretty much since March 5th. And so as a result, what's happening now is that there's the transition back to virtual instructor-led training. But the beauty is that right now we have the technology that can actually do it, whereas 2009 we didn't really have all of the technology that we have right now. So I think organizations are beginning to realize that not only is this a great way to train our workforce in the situation that we're in right now, where everyone's dispersed, everyone's working remotely, everyone's sitting at home. We still have to keep the wheels running. People still need to learn skills. But I've heard from many of my clients that once we emerge from all of this, they still want to retain more of the virtual because now they're seeing the benefit of it, whereas previously they never really saw the benefit because it was just easier to climb on a plane. But now they're beginning to see, oh wow, we can connect people from all around the world in the same room and not have to spend money on flying them around in hotels and all this sort of stuff. So you know, the transition into virtual now, because we have the technology, because everyone's being forced to do it, this may actually become the norm even when things sort of return back to the way they were previously.
So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's a huge expense to travel, and they can cut that expense out, and they actually have a chance to get more talent, I think, because you can do more. You can teach more classes if you don't have to waste 2 days of travel to get somewhere. I mean, do you see
I think
that?
that's right. And I mean, I don't think there's no substitute to meeting face to face. I think we all know that, and which is really interesting because I'm probably in Zoom contact now with more people that I haven't spoken to for the last 10 years. Simply because now we're forced that we can't be in contact face to face with people. So now we sort of feel, oh, now we have to be in contact even more. So, I mean, human nature is that we want to be in contact with people and want to have that face to face. So I'm not sure that virtual will substitute 100%, but I think what will begin to happen in the future is that people will look at what we call a blended approach. And so we may have, some face-to-face, some virtual, some what we call asynchronous work, which is, people work by themselves outside of the classroom. And I think this may become part of course design going forward. So incorporate more of the virtual while still having some of the face-to-face. And I think that, personally, I think that's probably the best approach to it once we get over the current situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So what are you seeing now as far as are people requesting more virtual? You've noticed in the last month?
So yes, and I mean, yes, people are definitely requesting more. It's interesting though, because what we're seeing right now is that people are, I mean, what are we into this? I live in Colorado. My home office is in Colorado, and we've had a sort of an official statewide lockdown for about a week now. But we have, myself and my family, we've been on a sort of self-imposed lockdown for the previous 2 weeks. So we're into our sort of end of our third week of our sort of self-imposed lockdown. So if we say that 3 weeks is probably the maximum that anybody's been in that situation with all the various different states and so on, bringing it in different times, I think we're still sort of in that finding our way period. Now, my own personal opinion, and this is my personal opinion, is that this is not going to be over anytime soon. I think that we're probably going to be in the situation for at least another month to 6 weeks. And then after that, I think there's going to be a very slow return to what was previous. So what are people looking for right now? The things that people are asking for is, how do we manage our team remotely? So remote team management is one of the topics. How do we deal with personal motivation, with resilience, with change? Everything is changing right now. How do we deal with that? So these are the sort of crisis programs that people are looking for right now. But as I said, organizations and clients have come to me and said, people still need to learn stuff to help them do their jobs. So as we move forward, maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, those requirements will change. And now we'll get back to maybe some of the communication skills, the presentation skills. How do we present? How do we do a business presentation over Zoom that I've never done before? How do we communicate effectively? How do we, move from contact to contract in a sales situation where I can't shake somebody's hand? These are some of the skills that maybe we've got to begin to learn in this sort of this new world that we're living in. And so I think, this will be a shifting landscape of what people want and what people, need in the future. The one thing that I've also found interesting about all of this is that while virtual is amazing, people are now sitting at home doing this, and they've got kids, and they've got pets, and they've got they've got other things calling on their time. Can they sit in front of a computer for 2 hours without interruption and sit on a training program? And I think that's causing a shift in how people are approaching it as well. So maybe the future is shorter sessions, bite-sized sessions, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, divided throughout the day or divided over several days, rather than sitting in front of a computer for a 2-hour training session. Because now they're being bombarded by other requirements of their time during the day, which they don't have if they're sitting at their desk in the office. So it really is shifting the way that we not only approach training, but also as a learner, what is my ability to sit and go through training? And that's what we're all playing with right now, what we're all trying to strategize around, and what we're working on to try and provide the perfect way that takes into account these other constraints that people have on their time.
Well, and that's interesting that you say that, because you and I have known each other, as you said, since around 2005, and we met each other through BNI, which is a networking group right when you first moved here. And so the relationships you forge knowing somebody face to face and meeting a person, I can tell you that from that group of people, and I know we were both in there for about a decade, but I can call any of those people because I've met with them over and over again, and they got to know me really well in person. I don't know that that's going to be the same virtually. You're not going to go hang out at a baseball game or go at a dinner as much. I mean, if you're doing everything virtually through business, hopefully you're still able to go do that with some of your friends, but it's definitely a different age. And I'm glad that you're going to be helping corporations, go through this, because it's the same thing in corporations. You forge those relationships in person, and can you have that same kind of insight to somebody over Zoom? I don't know.
And I think personally that we are going to learn. I mean, I used to be totally honest. I never used to use video at all in my virtual work, because I sort of felt, people don't want to see me, and I'm 2 hours behind the East Coast, and so most of my sessions start at 6 a.m. my time, and people do not want to see me at 6 a.m. in the morning. But the thing is that now I've used video in the last 2 weeks more than I've ever used in my whole career. And as a result, I think a lot of people are doing that, and people are maybe becoming more used to it. And so it's not as off-putting because we don't have a choice. And so maybe we can begin to develop different types of relationships and business connections through the use of these video conferencing platforms. So I don't know. I mean, time will tell. This is a remarkable period of time where we're all learning so much about ourselves and connections and how we work together. And it'll be really fascinating to see what comes out of this.
I will say, I think that I am talking to people, like you said, that I haven't seen in a long time. Over, and we're having drinks or dinner, and it is, I guess, good in that way that we've been able to use this creativity. I will definitely miss the way things were, though, but it's definitely something that we're going to deal with. Now, one thing that you mentioned is that people are at home And all of a sudden, they had a full-time job, and maybe it was a more than a full-time job. Um, and on top of that, they are now school teachers.
Hmm.
And, especially younger kids in elementary school that can't necessarily just sit at the computer and have that attention span and understand everything. Maybe they're just learning to read. Like I have a first grader, so, and I know you have, is she in second grade
She's
now?
third grade. Yeah.
Third, yeah. She's getting tall.
Yeah.
um, so it's definitely different. There's a lot more attention that the parents have to put on that child. And then there's some people have single family homes, and some, there's a lot of situations where it can be very difficult, and we're all learning that as well.
Hmm.
And so part of this is I wanted to see if you had any tips. I mean, I know you're very into education, um, and you've done so well with your daughter. But this is a new challenge, I'm sure, for you
For
as
all of
well.
us, yeah.
Yeah. So what has been working for you so far?
So, first and foremost, yes, I've got an 8-year-old, well, 8 3/4 if you ask her. And one thing about her school is that her school has done an incredible job of engaging them, and she starts school in front of the computer at 9 o'clock in the morning and doesn't finish probably until about 2:45 in the afternoon. And they build in recess, they build in lunch breaks and all these sorts of things. So, and I'm sure many people out there, their schools are doing similar things, but her school's really doing a phenomenal job. But it was interesting because yesterday she had to write a little report, and based on, they call it Oreo, so opinion and reason and example, and then I don't know what, I think the last O is, restating your opinion. And she wrote it on, her opinion is, I don't like, being at home for school. I want to be at school because, I miss my teacher and I miss my friends and things like that. So the one thing that we found is that we've almost forced it, is that she has to speak to one of her friends at least once a day.
Mhm.
And so again, we are incredibly lucky in this day and age that we've got this technology, that we've got FaceTime, that we've got WhatsApp, that we've got Facebook, Live, that we've got all of these things, and that we've got the ability to make these connections. If we didn't have that ability to make those connections, it would be a lot more difficult. So, yesterday she was on the phone, FaceTime, probably for about 3 hours with various different friends. Now, it's not a substitute, but at least there's still that kid-to-kid connection that she's having. I think if you ask for a tip, I think that would be one thing that I think would be really important, is to keep that connection going, that kid-to-kid connection. The second thing is that, because again, we do have the technology, we do have the internet, there are some amazing resources out there to keep them occupied, some great ideas. My wife and my daughter are doing a vision board, and just sort of sitting outside and thinking about, what do you see, and what do you see the future being, and what do you want to do, and all this sort of stuff. And it's these creative things that maybe we don't, in our hustle and bustle of every single day, we don't really get time to sit down and do that. So, we've never wanted to homeschool. And I'm just delighted that her school is doing such a terrific job in keeping them engaged, but also learning stuff, which is amazing, in this sort of remote education. But I think it's just that kid-to-kid contact, I think, is probably the most important thing that we found has kept her also engaged.
And that's really great that you mentioned that. I've been doing that with Maisie as well. We've been doing virtual play dates via Zoom, and I have an old computer. I set her up on that. I bring it up to her room, and they can see her, princess bunk bed, and she jumps around on that.
Yeah.
And her toys, and they talk about this and that, and oh my gosh, she lost a tooth the other day, and I fell asleep and I forgot. She was up before me. She never wakes up before me. And so I'm like, you better go back to sleep. It's pretty early in the morning. Maybe she didn't get here. Maybe the COVID-19 is making everything go slower. I was like, oh, it was terrible. So I had to write her a note, and I slipped it, under her pillow. She fell back asleep. The next play date, I hear her talking to one of her friends. I overhear her. I try, I don't need to listen in on it or anything, but she's showing her friend the handwriting of the note, and her friend saying, "Yeah, that could be your mom's." I'm like, oh, I've been found out. These little kids, they're still, thinking things
Yeah.
through. I'm glad that the kids are adapting so well to this. You're right. It doesn't replace going out and playing with them. But I know you and your family as well. You live in a beautiful area to go for walks. And look at nature, and everyone should try to get outside a little bit every day.
Yeah.
A distance from everyone else.
Correct.
It's amazing how many people are on the trails now, though.
It is really crowded, and when you see the parking lots, they're usually still packed. And our governor has basically said a very, very good thing. He said, the Rocky Mountains have been here for 100 million years. They're going to be here for another 100 million years. You don't have to go this week. And I think that's right. And so we've got an open space right behind our house, which is nice. So it's got a whole bunch of paths on, and making sure that we're definitely socially distancing. It is really good just to be able to get outside every day.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, is there anything you'd like to add about education right now for businesses? Is there any particular classes that they should focus on, do you think, that would help them get through to the other side of this?
Well, I mean, there's a ton of free resources out there, and you really do, you should really take advantage of those free resources. And there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good articles, a lot of free webinars that are out there. At Starfish Vilt, of course, we offer a whole, suite of programs. One thing that I think that organizations should be looking at seriously, though, is the transformation piece. So taking ILT, instructor-led training, and turning it into VILT, which is virtual instructor-led training. Now, it's not just a one-for-one. You don't just take the content that you have and put it just onto a virtual platform. It doesn't work that way. There's a methodology to design for the virtual room. There's a different way of thinking of how you access that data, and you get participants to interact with the data. And even more complex is that if you're designing for Zoom, or designing for Adobe Connect, or designing for WebEx, or designing for GoToMeeting, it requires different designs because each platform has different capabilities. So I think that would probably be the one thing I would say to organizations, is that don't stop training. People still need to be trained. People still need to learn the skills to do their jobs, and to do their jobs effectively. But also don't just take a face-to-face program and just run it as is virtually, because that won't work. And the only other thing I'd like to say is that VILT, virtual instructor-led training, is very different from a webinar, from e-learning. A webinar is a one-way flow of information. I talk, you listen. E-learning is an individual interacting with some sort of artificial intelligence. There's a certain level of engagement, but it's you with the computer. Virtual instructor-led training is, up to 25 people in the same virtual room who are interacting with each other and with a live instructor. They get to work in breakout groups and write on whiteboards and do exercises and so on. So it's a very engaging virtual session. It's not just a passive webinar where people are absorbing information. So transforming ILT, face-to-face programs, into the virtual world requires a different methodology of how you get people to access that and how you get them to interact. And as I said earlier, these probably have to be shorter, because the way that we're working right now, we have lots of other interruptions in our lives. So we've got to also figure out what should be put online, what should be taken offline. So start thinking about that right now, because as I say, we're still sort of a little bit in finding our way mode right now, but the dust will settle, and we will get into a rhythm of everybody working from home and everybody being remote. And that could go on for quite a period of time. And so as a result, let's plan for that future where we can begin to still upskill individuals and keep their skills high. And if we start transforming those face-to-face programs now, then we're good to go, in a month or 2 months' time, and keep people upskilled. So that would just be the major consideration that I think most organizations should think about.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be gloom and doom. We are going to get through this. We're going to get to the other side. And this could be a good thing. It could make companies more profitable in the long run if they aren't flying everybody around. And you could probably also look at it as really being able to have your finger on the pulse of what your company needs and being able to provide it right away, because sometimes the trainings don't happen when you need them because you have to have a person there.
Yeah.
So this could be a nice way to improve what you have already.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. But let's all be safe. Let's not get out there too soon. The way that we'll beat this is by each of us doing our little part. And so, you're absolutely right. We will get through this. We will come out the other side. But let's not be too hasty to rush back there, because we want to make sure that we do it properly.
Absolutely. And I always love to take time to thank the people that are working on the front lines.
Absolutely.
It's scary time. I mean, even people that are working in grocery stores and gas stations, and nurses and doctors, obviously, postal workers. I mean, everybody that's out there keeping us running at a minimum of what we need during this time. It's very brave and commendable, and we certainly appreciate you.
Well, my one-man crusade is, I travel a lot. I'm on a plane, at least I used to be on a plane, 2-3 times a week. And one thing, anybody who travels will know that they always make an announcement, if you're an active military personnel, you can board first. I think after this, they should add nurses, doctors, firemen, police, delivery truck drivers. These are the guys that are keeping us going, and they should be allowed to board first in the future. So that's my one-man crusade.
I like that idea. I hadn't thought of that, but I know that you travel all the time, so you hear that announcement several times a week. And I think you're absolutely right, because they just have the biggest hearts to go out there and do that and take the risks, so that the rest of us can just try to stay home and stay well, so it doesn't spread anymore. So thank you so much for taking the time today. It's always amazing to see you. We're going to have to do this more often, and I guess this will be the only way for a while. But yeah, and if you have any other topics in the future, we'd love to have you back on. It's always interesting to hear your thoughts.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Erica, and stay well and stay safe.
Thank you so much. And say hi to everyone for me.
I will.
Okay, bye now.